Good morning and welcome to a Worth It Wednesday. This one's going to be, I always try to do them quick, but I'm going to try and be quick. So this one is Quantum Memory Power by Dominic O'Brien. I really like this one because when you read the Moonwalking with Einstein, you find out that he won that Joshua Foer completed the American one, but the European one or the world one is much more competitive. And this guy has won that like 8 times. Even though it's progressed since then, it's the world champion, so it's the more aggressive one. And the whole time, it feels very relatable. It's very casual. He has this natural speaking voice. I listened to audiobook, and he just kind of goes through the methods. However, there is one thing that I learned that is unique because, like, I'm going through this, and some of the references he makes, I don't get. He mentions some actors he uses for part of his mnemonic techniques that I'm like, who is that? I'm like, that name sounds familiar, but I don't know who that is. And he's like, oh, well, just think of this. Or, and he thinks of, there's a movie called 10. And he's like, well, I think of that movie or this person because of that. I'm like, I haven't seen that. So a lot of the times, the memory techniques are going to be very personal. So he doesn't teach that directly, sort of, or he doesn't go into that. He's like, oh, well, simply just think of this person. But if you don't know who that person is, sometimes something will work better. Like when I memorized the Invictus poem, there's a word called menace, and that's not a very common word. So when I say menace, if you're a Magic the Gathering player, you know that's an aspect where if your creature has this ability, it has to be blocked by two creatures. So you can think of that. Like when I think about that poem, I think about two creatures, and the menace shall find me unafraid, or the menace of the years finds me unafraid is part of that poem. That's I think of two people trying to, or it works in my mind, but it may not work in yours. You might think the Phantom Menace and Star Wars. It's like, but you have to find the thing with you that triggers that the most. If you get an older generation, there used to be a cartoon called Dennis the Menace. There was a live action movie had Walter Matthau, but you might be like, who's Walter Matthau? Well, look it up, and they see that's the thing. So something that might work really well for me is not going to click for you necessarily. So memory can be something very personal, and several times, a lot of the times, especially if you're remembering somebody's name, a lot of times it's not a good idea to actually tell them how you remember their name because they might get offended, even if you mean no offense. And all because it also you're trying to remember their name, so they should be complimented in the spirit that you are trying very hard to remember their name. But either way, this book, Quantum Memory, it goes over a lot of different things, and it talks about being able to do things like on a schedule, like if you have a monthly, if you have a 30 and like the journey program. It does talk about the major method. I don't like that one, but you may, and some people really like the major method. It makes things very simple for them. But either way, it's a great book. Memory can be very personal, and that's what I've learned. So, but also something, and one thing also, he talks about when he was growing up, he was not a good learner. He was dyslexic, and he brings up he'll read reports he got when he was in school and said that he can't pay attention. And he had a bunch of them saying like he's never going to do anything. He can't use his imagination, all kinds of, it was bad. And he has several of them. So anyway, that's why it's a good book, because it removes any thought of like, oh, I can't do this. I'm like, this guy was like failing school. If he can do that, you can do it too. So it makes it accessible. And yeah, so anyway, Quantum Memory Power by Dominic O'Brien. Very good book. Highly recommend it. Definitely worth it. And as always, don't look for a fair fight.